Hi, I'm Emma from Suntrap Forest Centre. We are the London Borough of Waltham Forest Environmental Education Centre, and we have been welcoming visitors of all ages for the last 50 years. We're currently closed for redevelopment, but we will be reopening in spring 2021. I'm going to talk to you about how to get the most out of a visit to your local green space with the children that you work with. So a little bit about why it's important, a bit about risk, and then lots of simple activities that you can do with children in your local green space that require little resources. And most of the resources will be natural materials that you will be able to find there. For example, twigs, leaves, seeds, feathers. So a little bit about why it's important. Firstly, there's lots of space and fresh air. So this means that children can do things on different scales. They can be noisy, they can get messy, and they've got all this freedom to explore their environment. And this is great for their physical well-being. So lots of movement, being active, and lots of opportunities to develop their gross motor skills through jumping, climbing, skipping, hopping. They also get lots of first-hand experience. So this could be through picking up seeds, leaves, twigs. If you were doing a story about a worm and talking about how it moves, then actually being able to find one, look at it, hold it is fantastic. It also allows children to experience the weather and also the seasons throughout the year. It gives them increased confidence, curiosity about the natural world, and also opportunities to take managed risk. And risk taking is really important. It's part of the learning process of developing new skills. Also, through all of this, they'll be learning maths, literacy, art, and in the new EYFS framework, there's an early learning goal called the natural world. And so this will fit in really well with that. Here's a word cloud to show lots of opportunities that children get through outdoor play. So we've mentioned lots of these words already, like active, explore, they've got all this space. Also, you've got sort of mark making, imagination, problem solving. The outdoors is fantastic for all of that. Just a little bit about assessing benefits and risk. We recommend that you do a risk-benefit assessment. And when you do one of these, most of the time, it will show that the benefits far outweigh the risks associated with the activity. And this can be especially good when you're talking to parents, as it has an emphasis on the benefits of it, particularly related to children's well-being and attainment. Next, I'm going to show you a few activities that you can do in your local green space.
I'm going to show you a few activities that you can do in your local green space. And all of these activities require you to bring nothing with you, so we're just using natural materials. Something really simple that children love doing is collecting leaves, particularly at this time of year. So if you ask children to collect, say 3 leaves and count with them together, so 1, 2, 3, and then just simply throwing them up in the air. If you've got a few children and they're quite close together, this is lovely. So throwing them up in the air and watching them float to the ground. That encourages lots of use of language when describing how they're moving. Also at this time of year, there are a lot of seeds falling off the trees, particularly helicopter seeds. They look like this. And if you get children to throw them up in the air, or depending on how tall they are, drop them, and you can see them spin like a helicopter to the ground. So 2 resources that you can find in pretty much any green space, even your local park. Collecting sticks. Children love collecting sticks, and there's so many different things that you can do with your sticks. You can put them into size order, so talking about whether a stick is shorter or longer than another stick. And if you put them down on the ground, if you started off with one stick, ask one of your children to collect another stick, and then they can have a look at it, decide is it longer or shorter than the other stick, and start to put it into size order. So I'm going to put my stick there. Another child can pick up a different stick. So is this one longer or shorter than the stick in the middle? And it's shorter, so I'm going to put it, and starting with this size order, depending on how many children you've got, will depend on how long your line is. With all of your natural materials, so I've got some sticks here, give children, they could use their pockets and go and collect a few different things. So we've got some conkers, we've got some sticks, some leaves, some acorns, and lay them out on the ground. There's lots of different things you can do with some natural materials. You can sort them based on what they look like. So we've got some conkers here, sort them into acorns, leaves, got my sticks. So that's one way of sorting it. You might also like to sort it based on colour, based on, as we've said before, size. Repeating patterns are lovely things to do with a few natural materials as well. So if I was to start off with a conker and then an acorn without rolling everywhere, and then a conker, can the children tell you what comes next? And so then they can find another acorn, and so on. And you could make different repeating patterns depending on the age of your children, so how difficult they are. So some other activities you can do with sticks: mark making. So they're brilliant. If you've got some mud here, using a stick as a pencil is really good for developing fine motor skills, and you might just let them draw a picture in it. Or can you draw a straight line? So we've got a straight line. It might be that you'd like them to draw a circle. They might choose to draw a face. They might choose to draw the letter that their name begins with. So mark making with sticks, particularly in mud, is really fun. Other activities you can do with natural materials is you can do some natural art. So I might decide to make a face. So I've got two conkers to be the eyes. I have acorn for my nose, and a very simple one, I've got sticks to be my mouth. So children could make letters with their sticks and their natural materials, and really any sort of picture that they like, using all these lovely things that they've found. Just one thing, I've got a daisy here. Generally picking flowers if they're growing on grass, like a few daisies, is okay, but please don't pick flowers that are growing on sort of bushes, so roses and things like that, as there's not too many of those. But things like daisies and dandelions are perfect. So one last thing that you can do is some really nice pretend play. So I've got some conkers here. We could pretend they're eggs. Can the children build a nest to put the eggs into? So again, using sticks, and I'm sure they would take a lot more time over it than this, but you've got building a structure using these sticks, and you could keep going and see how many of the eggs you can fit into them. So that's a very simple nest. You could also use all these natural materials for some pretend play. So I've got a really nice piece of bark here. This would make a great table. So maybe these apples would be good. So they could be bottom. So I've got a little table there. I could pretend that this is a bench. Could put some little people on there. You can make a bed. You could use your leaves as a, I don't know, it was a blanket for the bed, and so on. So all these natural materials just encourage lots of use of language, as we've said, repeated patterns, counting, lots of mathematics, lots of being creative in art, and also learning about the natural world. I'm out in the wonderful Epping Forest to show you a few activities that you can do where children are using their senses. So the first sense that we're going to do is using the sense of touch. So we're going to be looking at different textures. Now, a really nice way to do this, instead of just giving children a pot to collect in, is using an egg box. And what I've done in here is just put a few cards, and on top of those cards there's a few words to describe the texture. So depending on the children's age, you could put these in or you could leave them out. So I've got hard, soft, rough, smooth, spiky and crunchy. And so as you're going for your walk, children could collect a few different natural materials to put into one of these egg boxes. And what's nice about using an egg box is the children will need to collect something that fits into that pot. So you're also having a look at scale as well. I've got a nice holly leaf over here. Now, as long as they don't put the holly leaf in their hand and put their hand together like that, it's not going to hurt them too much, but just by looking at it and feeling it, they can tell that it's spiky. So I would put it into the spiky box. And then I've got a conker here that can fit into the hard one. I've got a leaf that feels quite smooth, so I put it into the smooth part, and so on. And after you've done this, you could play a really nice game where a child covers their eyes and they have to hold something in their hand, and then they can guess what that texture is. So that's an egg box, and you could use it for lots of different ways, lots of different things as well. So it could just be for collecting different colours, or even just as a little sort of treasure box. Another sense that children will be using whilst they're walking through a wonderful green space like this is the sense of sight. And using their eyes to look at the different colours around them is great in a forest at different seasons within the year, particularly in autumn. If you have a card like this with different colours on, then children can go around and match different natural materials to the colour on the sheet. So you're going to be able to find some green leaves. Even found a green crabapple that had dropped to the ground. But remember, don't take them out if you found them in somewhere like Epping Forest. Got some nice brown leaves, brown seeds, and you'll be able to find some yellow leaves depending on what time of year you come into the forest or your local green space. Orange leaves, maybe even some red leaves. But for these two, it might be that you need to be looking but not collecting natural materials that are this colour. Because in the forest, or even in a park, you might find some red flowers, you might find some red berries on the plants, but just have a look at these, don't pick them, because there's a limited number of flowers in an area, and also in Epping Forest you're not allowed to collect berries and take them out of the forest. Blue, it might be that you need to look up to the sky, and hopefully if you come out onto the forest in a sunny day, you might see some blue sky. Another way to look at colour as you're walking through your green space is to use one of these sticky cards. It's just a piece of card with some double-sided sticky tape on it, and you'll need to help children start to peel it off. And just a few tips: if they touch it too much, it won't be sticky anymore, and it's best to do this on a dry day. Also, if children collect natural materials, say like a big leaf, if you stuck a big leaf down on there, you're not going to be able to fit many of them. But if you got a little bit, then you could see if children could find as many different colours as they can. So this one would be yellow speckled with brown. So I'll put that one on. So I've just ripped off a tiny little bit. And then I might rip a little bit of this nice yellow leaf, stick it next to it. What should we have? A bit of the green one. And so on. And then they could count how many different colours they've been able to find on their walk. You could also use this to do repeating patterns as well. So you could have yellow leaf, green leaf, yellow leaf, green leaf, and so on. The other senses that I've missed out have been the sense of taste. As I said, in Epping Forest, you're not allowed to pick berries and take them away. You might be able to do this in other areas if you had the landowner's permission, but remember, a lot of berries that you find out in the forest are poisonous, so you'd need to know what you were doing. And you've also got the sense of hearing. And to do this in the forest, in a place like this, if you get children to cup their hands, put them behind their ears like that, and then they'll be able to hear lots of different sounds, and then they could count how many different sounds they can hear. Hopefully a lot of them will be natural ones, like the birds singing. Another activity you can do using sticks, particularly if you're in a wooded place, is you can make some music. And so just by banging them together, or it could be that you make a sound for the children to copy. So we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, and then see if they can copy it. Also, banging your sticks against a tree, that's going to make a noise, and then you could compare it to other size trees using different size sticks as well, and also rubbing it either at the length of it, the tree, bark, or even side to side. And depending on what kind of tree you've got, this one's an oak tree, it's got some really deep fissures as you go around it, that's going to make a different sound to this hornbeam over here. So again, up and down, and so children can make comparisons. Another activity you could do, if you've got some trees and you've got some leaves, is you could do some leaf and bark rubbings. So for this, you will need preferably some dry leaves, so it's better to do this on a day where it's dry and the leaves haven't got all wet and soggy like these ones. But you need some paper. I've used a clipboard, but really just a hard surface. Feel the leaf, and the side of the leaf that's rough, you want to put it underneath your piece of paper, flatten it down, and then holding a wax crayon at the side like this and rubbing it, you're going to make an imprint on your piece of paper. I suggest children do this on the ground. It's a bit tricky when you're standing up like this. So that's one of our leaves, and then you could find a different type of leaf, and then they can make comparisons as well, looking at shape, and you could vary your colours too and make a really nice piece of natural art. Using your piece of paper as well, you can do a bark rubbing. So again, we've said there's different types of trees generally in a natural area that you go to. So here I've got this hornbeam one, and then as I said, I've got this oak one, and this one's going to make a really nice pattern. So hold your piece of paper onto the tree and then just rub side to side with your wax crayon, and then you've got the bark of an oak tree, and then you can compare it to the bark of a different tree. A really great thing to do, particularly if you go out into Epping Forest, is have a look for some invertebrates. So we might call them mini beasts. They're basically little animals that don't have any bones in their bodies. And you will be able to find some mini beasts living underneath pieces of wood like this, living in the leaves, and children are fascinated by them. And all you would need to do this is a little pot. Now this is, I suppose, a proper bug pot. It's got a little magnifying glass on top, but if you don't have one of those, even just a yoghurt pot or even a see-through little pot like that would be even better. So turning over a log like that, I can already see a few things moving around. Children can then have a look, see what they can find. They could use a leaf a bit like a scoop. So you could scoop it up and then put the leaf and the animal into the pot, maybe take the leaf away so they can see it quite clearly. Turning over bigger pieces of wood like that, that's quite big, so it might be they just turn it over, or slide it over, sorry, to the side like that, and have a little look in the leaves there. So once they've collected something, and if it's a worm, they might even be able to use their hand to pick it up and put it in. Just make sure that they're being really careful. A lot of these animals are very small and they're very delicate, so their legs can be broken quite easily. So do make sure you're telling children to be careful. Another thing, don't collect generally anything red. So it could be that they're poisonous, so it's got a warning colour. Anything like a wasp or a bee, they're sort of bright colours. And if you're putting them into a little pot like this, you don't want anything with wings because it wouldn't be very fair on the animal. Then you just need a really simple identification, so picture chart like this. This is on our website, so you can have a look there for it. And this shows the main animals that you'd find in a woodland. They can identify their animal, and if you do this by counting legs, so counting with the children the number of legs and then matching it up to the picture, could be looking at colour and matching it up, describing its shape, so there's some nice circles, sort of long rectangular shapes, and matching it up to their picture too for that. And then once you've identified it, you might want to talk about how the animal moves. And children might like to do a bit of role play and act it out. So especially like a wiggly worm, and there's even some lovely songs like A Worm at the Bottom of My Garden, songs that you might want to sing with the children as well. And it also links to some lovely stories about snails, there's lots about sort of superworm and stories like that too. One last activity you can do is some natural art. So I mentioned it earlier, but if you're going to do natural art in the forest here, rather than just putting sticks and leaves on top of sticks and leaves that are already there, just move them away. And then by looking at the animal, the children could decide that it's got one body part and say 8 legs. And then they might find some sticks and they could put the legs onto the animal as well. So some really nice use of language, describing words to make their animal. And they've also got a lovely piece of art as well. Now once they finish, so once you finish looking at the animal, you do need to make sure that you put the animal back where you found it, because this is their habitat, the place where they live. So rather than going like this, carefully putting the animal back underneath the log and returning the logs and returning the leaves back to how you found them.
I hope you thought that those ideas would be useful and something that you can then go and do with the children that you work with. Just a few more bits of information. We have put some resources onto the hub. So there are lots of ideas which tell you about the areas of learning and also what equipment you'll need to do it. A lot of the activities there you would have seen in the video too. And then if you have a look on our website, we've got some more ideas on there. There's also Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, but if you have a look under the section that's called Supporting Outdoor Learning for Schools, then you'll find the list of sheets there. And if you do have a go at doing this with any of the children that you work with, please do share photos or videos with us on social media. We have a Facebook, Instagram and Twitter page. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.